Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Hump with Katie. I'm your host, Katie Thiroux, and I'm really excited to share this week's episode with you. It's with the bassist Olivier Babaz. If you're new to The Hump, this is a series where I interview some of the world's most talented artists and musicians and find out why are they so amazing, how did it all happen, and ultimately what can we learn from their journey. We've already had some fantastic guests like Larry Grenadier, Christian McBride, Rufus Reid, Paul Ellison, and some amazing non-bassists like Justin Coughlin and Ken Peplowski. You can find all of these episodes and more on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can go watch them on YouTube. So go like, subscribe, download, leave a comment, and let me know who you want to hear from next. Before I bring you today's amazing episode, I'd love to thank our sponsors. And first up, we have the clothing company, Jams World. You guys, I absolutely love Jams World. I'm wearing a Jams World right now, of course. And the reason why I love it is because the fabric is made from 100% spun crushed rayon, and it keeps me cool and comfortable. They've been making clothing in Honolulu, Hawaii since 1964. And the artwork is so unique. It's screen printed right onto the fabric, and it looks like a piece of art. Go to jamsworld.com and use the promo code Jazz15, and you'll get 15% off your entire online purchase. Next up, I'd like to thank Kolstein's String Shop. I absolutely love Kolstein's. They are doing amazing things for the bass community. They have 2 amazing locations in Long Island, New York, and a killer online store. Go to kolstein.com and use the promo code KD10, and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. Okay, the time has come to bring you our episode today with the incredibly talented and creative improviser, bassist, Olivier Babaz. I first heard about Olivier from Discover Double Bass, the great online bass course, and he was doing just the most amazing things with the bow. Not just your regular old jazz bowing, but a lot of percussive bowing and different rhythms and styles. So this is really just my chance to indulge myself and dig in and ask him about his influences and growing up in Paris and moving around a lot. He moved to the Netherlands, and now he's in Montreal. Along with being just an incredible creative improviser, he's an amazing teacher. He has so many online resources, of course, through Discover Double Bass, but he's got a killer YouTube channel, and he's always going live, and he plays bass and keyboards at the same time. It's so much fun. Go check it out. Of course, I'll leave links down below. At times, he thought he was getting a little too intellectual, but it was fantastic. A really great insight to a really creative mind. Without further ado, here is this week's episode with Olivier Babaz. Time today, but I want to talk about you and everything that you do. So I guess let's start, because you're not from Montreal. You're from France, right?
Yes, I'm actually from Paris, neighborhood of Paris, but let's say Paris. Yeah. Yeah,
and from what I understand, bass wasn't your first instrument, and not really even jazz was not your first music, was it?
Well, I started let's say at 10 or 11 years old on the guitar, but switched very quickly on the bass, electric bass at first, and quite naturally towards the double bass, and so I was lucky to grow in a quite diverse environment, so to be exposed to plenty of music, and it was great, and I was lucky to travel a bit for studies and for music, and before I came here, so I had time to feel a little bit my backpack before settling here in Montreal.
But were you kind of self-taught to start off? Did you have a teacher?
Yeah, I was self-taught at first, really ear player. Quite, I mean, I it's always the case, but of course, at some point, I enrolled in a music school and then Conservatoire, and then I had some opportunities to study at some specialized jazz school, and then university for composition. So yeah, I'm from a self-taught background, and I still keep that philosophy, but I have plenty of experience within the Conservatoire and university path.
Yeah, but I think that's great, and I think there's an advantage to being self-taught. And I know you have a lot to say about ear training and improvising things by ear as well. And do you think like there's some kind of advantage to that, right? Like not reading something from a book and then trying it, just more like hearing it first and then seeing if you can do it?
Yes, there are some advantages, and there are some maybe not drawbacks, but there are some other challenge where it becomes really useful to learn really quickly how to read and how to, of course, understand. I think the main advantage, but I'm sure a lot of musicians can relate to that when you're self-taught and really exploring stuff by yourself, especially when you started very young, is that when you go to school, when you finish by learning things in a more institutionalized way, it's just about putting names on stuff you already know and explaining mechanically things you were hearing and you were understanding maybe on a more, I wouldn't say deeper level, but at least instinctive level. I mean, we all at one point felt that oh, of course I know this, but I didn't know that it could be explained at that kind of chromatic modulation or but of course we have, and sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes it's while you're studying something and you're thriving on the piano or on the bass, and that you say, oh, that is really, really something I wish somebody had told me so that I can. So it's kind of going both ways. It's really, I don't consider any way to approach music better than the other. It's just I fall into that gang about playing by ear and in a very almost naive way, but developing some very personal approach to it. And yeah,
I love it because I feel like the music you play, it's like it's not one kind of music. You don't have like a box, and so I feel like it works for you.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, we can in 2021, we can definitely say that from a lot of. I mean, I don't know extensively your own music, and of course, I can relate it to, of course, a direct lineage of swing and jazz, but it has certain stuff that brings. I mean, I can say that from you or from everybody, and of course from me. I know I can't put myself in a box, but neither can I for a lot of people. So it's just, I mean, it's just about improvising. I think that's the main thing, and it relates about what we were talking about, learning things by ear. Or, I mean, improvising is really for me about exploring, opening doors, and making choices, and sometimes going further into some. And making your own vocabulary with certain stuff. So I would say I'm mainly an improviser. Improviser, yeah. That's not a genre, but that's a way to play music. How it relates.
Do you like that feeling, like when you're saying like you go down that one doorway and it's just like you don't know how you're going to get out of it?
Absolutely, and that's where things get crispy, actually, because, of course, that's the balance between being in a comfort zone and somewhere where you have your own things working on and you know where you're going, and on the other way, you have to push it a little further and go in the forest and let yourself be changed by the music. And jazz and improvisation is really beautiful for that, because we are really putting ourselves outside.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out there, and it's interesting. And what I see from you too is you can have that experience with other musicians, of course, right? Improvising with each other, but you could also experience that just by yourself. And I love watching you, like when you have a groove going and then you can improvise. It's so special that you can do alone as well.
Yeah. And I love it, and it's something for me in my experience. That's something that is really related to not being a very rooted geographically person. I mean, I moved a lot, and I didn't mean that by traveling. I mean that by changing the place you live, the city, the country, the region, and being a musician and finding yourself by your own for a few months before you get out in all the jams and you make new contacts. And I found myself in that situation many times, to be for the first 6 months of arriving somewhere, not knowing everybody to play with. And actually the kalimba stuff that I started 12 or 11 years ago, I started like this. It's when I moved from Réunion Island and I arrived here. It's just a way to dress up the bass when playing solo at first, and then it took a whole new other dimension when I started building it on it. But improvising by ourselves is and it's a great way to see your the thing you always do and the thing you have to take to the next level if you want it to be not only a good idea but a whole direction. And that's the difference between having an idea and having a direction. Is taking that idea and going the further you can, and maybe going back a bit and making choice afterwards with it. But improvising. And I have to say the pandemic and the quarantining thing, of course, put that on another level, because as musicians, we don't have any reliable, simple tools yet to play together distanced. So playing by myself with the keyboards and all was some way to explore that and to be perfectly in control of the way. I mean, anyway, not having to play a tune and just having to start from somewhere and see where it goes, but maintaining some kind of contact with people listening is a great challenge. I never did that at this point before.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that the quarantine and the lockdown, I mean, for everybody, even non-musicians, but it really, you either showed you what you needed to work on, or you still had blinders on and just kept doing what you were doing. So it was nice to just kind of explore, right?
Absolutely. And it was, I mean, it's not over. You're in the West Coast, right?
Yeah.
So it's opening back a bit.
Yeah.
Can you say that? I mean, do you have like outdoor gigs starting a bit or things like this?
Yeah.
So we're really not there yet, but it's really beginning very slowly. I guess we will have a few things this summer, but I mean, I don't want to talk about that at the past yet. Exactly. We'll see where it goes.
Do you have any standout records when you were growing up? Things that you just love to listen to? Because I know you have multiple musical influences, but was there something that stood out for you?
There are a few things. Yes, I've always loved blues. So I've always loved Johnny Hooker, B.B. King. Blues guitar players are really something I was always drawn to. As well, from the English era, like all the Eric Clapton as well. Of course, Led Zeppelin and all these guys. So I was really drawn into guitar very, very early. And Django Reinhardt, which is of course a major French influence on improvisation, and of course the other musician, and later, of course, the violin. Stéphane Grappelli and Didier Lockwood and Jean-Luc Ponty, all the younger violin players, and a lot of West African music, of course, Salif Keita. I listened a lot of music like this, but mainly blues. I mean, my instinct goes to blues, and when I'm playing any style of music, my natural way to get into a phrasing is to move around the blues thing, but with this European taste to it, if I can say, because that's a very powerful flavor, and I'm classically trained, but as I told you later, so I used my classical training more as a technical background, but aesthetically I'm more close to blues guitar player than let's say classical bass players, even with the arco. That's my way to do it. But on the other side, the gypsy flavor and influence still keeps a direct lineage to the classical playing. This sounds really intellectual, but I'm pretty sure you can correct. But yeah.
And while you're growing up, like you maybe like a teenager, you said like there's music happening, like you're able to go see music. Are you playing at all, like out in town? I've never, when I was a teenager, I didn't go to a lot of shows, but I played a lot with all my friends everywhere, whether it was in school or in summer camps. Music has been my way to integrate myself socially, as it has been for all of us musicians, for a lot of us musicians, and playing with other people and jamming all around. I mean, when I had the age to finally go to bars and go to jam sessions, for me it was a revelation at 17, 18 to be able to go to a place where there were a musician on a stage and having the possibility to play. It was something really, because you, of course, those are much more experienced musicians when you have this age, so it's something really important. And I did a lot of that. I did that in France, absolutely, in Netherlands, because I studied in Netherlands. Back in France, in different towns. And of course, when I arrived in Réunion Island, when I lived, and of course, when I arrived in Montreal, and when I go to US, and when I go to New York, I always go to the jam sessions in New York, of course. Mm-hmm. It's a really, I've always found that jam sessions are really something very particular to jazz, and that doesn't really exist under a comparable form in any other art, or even in any other professional, because you have a gathering of people that are making the same thing, but they're not doing it in real time together. I mean, you can have a, photograph gathering, but it's not about collaborating in real time right now out of nowhere. Whereas jam sessions in jazz are really something great, because, I mean, if you arrive somewhere and you want to make friends and have fun and eventually maybe develop some kind of professional relationships, jam sessions are, I mean, it's the only efficient way to meet people. I mean, you can go to every school you want and make every contact you want. I mean, if you can jam and have fun over some standards and chill, it's the best way for me. Yeah,
to meet people.
It's like speed dating, and you find out really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's gonna work or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, and the working part of it has many different levels, because it can work for, let's say, a standard jazz gig, which it might work for this, but it might maybe not work for some kind of a totally open, free session. Some people are not, and you can feel that. I mean, sometimes you can not really feel, but you can have. I mean, it's it's great to see new people and meet new people.
Definitely. When did you realize that you wanted to or needed to go to a conservatory to study classical music or classical technique?
Oh, as soon as I picked up the acoustic bass. I mean, of course, I mean, as soon as I picked up classical bass, double bass, I knew that it had that background that I couldn't ignore, and I couldn't like to play. It's nice to play. I mean, somewhere we all know, and I of course knew that. All right, that's cool to play like a big acoustic bass, but the way it's supposed to work is not just that. This is like 10% of what it can do. So even if I'm not aiming at a classical career or anything, I have to figure out how the 90 other percent are working.
Yeah.
I'm talking mechanically on the instrument. I'm not talking musically there, but I mean, I know, and of course, my wife is a viola player, so I know that there's this whole world, and of course, I mean, everybody tells you that when you start double bass, whatever your age, that you have to play a bit of arco and see. So I went to Conservatoire and I studied some basic classical technique, but it was never my main thing. I mean, I love to hear it. I love great players, but it has always been building my own vehicle. And then the arco thing about improvising with it is just a personal taste. And then expanding further and studying with François Rabbath is just expanding my own way of digging into improvisation and real-time composition with the bow as well, and making it work with other styles. But I'm even more drawn to other bowed instruments or traditions, for example, than classical bass. I mean, for example, the fiddle tradition is something of a huge. There's a lot of stuff there and there are some awesome bass players, especially in the US. There are a few that are really exploring that path, and that's something I can relate, even if it's not my culture, but at least I can really relate to, oh, that sound is, I mean, there are a lot of flavors on the bass, and I like to explore a lot of them, and relating to Indian phrasing as well. There are some awesome Indian players, not of course on the bass, but that are playing on sarod or on the bowed instruments that are really interesting to check, or even the bansuri flute. There are a lot of stuff that we can grab, and I love to, for 30 minutes, just following the phrases and trying to catch the inflections and everything. And I love YouTube. I love YouTube for the 0.75 speed percent speed thing, because I mean, it's not decreasing too much that it becomes horrible to hear, but it's decreasing enough that you can hear something you could not hear I'm talking about the phrasing there, some kind of, especially for the Indian phrasing, all the details of ornamentation that you don't grasp, you just hear this vague thing around the note, and then when you hit the decrease speed button, you say, oh, okay, they're doing this whole thing before they landing there.
Yeah.
And here are where all those microtones are, because it doesn't sound so much like out there, but if you listen to all the mini thing, you're like, okay, it's really incredible. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I find that interesting too. I like listening to ragas and Indian music, and like you're saying, it's like you hear all this rhythm happening, but inside of it, there's all these inflections and articulations, and then of course they have like the standard like the coda, they all play together at the same time after 30 minutes, that they all know what they're doing. But it kind of turns everything upside down, because you can also of course play in a jazz setting, and all of a sudden you have these different You have the same rhythm, but with different articulations happening. It's very cool. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a totally different way of playing music as well. The whole philosophy behind it is it's more, I find it more close to poetry than, I mean, architecturally speaking, I find it closer to poetry than to to a more Western approach of music, where you have I'm talking about structures there,
Yeah.
but for example, I collaborated with some musicians from Iran here, from Iran, and they have some Persian music, and they have these very intricate music that you're like, okay, how does that work? Is there a repeat point? And is there like, what, everything is changing, the key signature and the tonality. And in fact, when you learn that it's based around a poem, a poetry, and you read the poem, even if you don't understand the word, but when you see visually the poem written, and you say, okay, this is the long phrase, this is the shorter one, this is the repetition of the first thing here, and it's all making sense when you see the text.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. And I think a lot of the Indian music has as well that kind of relation, but I'm really not an expert on that. But this is enlightening to discover.
Yeah, definitely. So when did the fascination or the sound of the bow, the arco, for you come into play?
I was really drawn to it because of mainly Renaud Garcia Fons. By curiosity and by Renaud Garcia Fons, it's really the musician that opened my curiosity, that tickled my curiosity about that sound, not playing classical music. And there's Renaud Garcia Fons, and of course, very quickly there was Edgar Meyer, who, of course, we all, a lot of bass player can really relate to being in ode with Edgar. But Edgar Meyer has this more American side to it, where you can relate to an almost fiddle tradition, and Renaud Garcia Fons has this more, to me at least, the way I received it, had this more of a South European flavor to it. French and Spanish, of course, he's a great flamenco artist, and Italian, and all these Mediterranean collaborations. And yeah, so Renaud Garcia Fons. And of course, later I studied a lot. I studied in Sunday music Didier Lockwood. Didier Lockwood is was a French violin player, and from a lineage of course, Stéphane Grappelli. And he pushed a lot, and he created a school, and he pushed a lot of strings in a let's say gypsy, not only gypsy, but in jazz, through that gypsy tradition. And that's the way I as well approached it, going from Stéphane Grappelli and the gypsy world. But it's exploring. Like I love the fact that it's a quite unknown territory as well, outside in classical music. So it's a curiosity and challenge of doing that. And I know, and the sound is great. And I discovered François Rabbath, of course, and all the great innovators in the music, and some jazz players as well, Slam Stewart.
Yeah.
With François?
Yeah.
Yeah, in France, during this pandemic, I had a grant from government of Canada, so I could study with him via Zoom and FaceTime and everything. And of course, as soon as I hit Paris, I'll be back at François' home. Yeah, and it was an awesome experience to study with him, with following and multiple lessons this past year. It was a it brought me to a whole new level. For certain stuff I'm not a specialist of, and yeah.
That's nice when you can. There's still always more to work on, right?
Oh yes, it's absolutely, yes, it's a never ending. I mean, when I hear you practicing vocals, and then when I hear your music, when you're actually performing, and so playing bass and singing, and especially the relationship between both parts, how you articulate the heads and the accompaniment, and how one influences the other, is really, really, really awesome. And I love. I think you have a few videos about that on DDB, of course, but even on your own channel or Instagram, I don't remember. And it's really great. I mean, I really enjoy, especially the one where both lines are modified by each other, like the way you catch certain part of the head with the bass playing. Really great work, and it's very inspiring.
Yeah, it's always fun to just.
But the multitask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and when you. No, but it's a part of that. The multitasking of it is something that bass. With bass, we only play one note at a time. I mean, almost, and there's room to play something else, being with your feet, with your voice, or even with other additional stuff. It can be keyboard, it can be anything, but there's room for that, and there's need as well, because playing bass by ourselves is cool for us practicing, but the day you have to play a solo gig or something, you realize very quickly that, okay, I need something else than just the bass, whatever my level of even if I'm okay at bass, it's not enough. You have to. Slam Stewart sung, and the way we feel that Slam Stewart is awesome at bass is in big part due to the fact that he's an awesome singer.
Yeah.
Because these solos are so cool, because the singing is really cool. Anyway.
I definitely want to talk about the multitasking in a second, but I heard you say one time that playing arco is a different instrument from playing pizzicato. And I totally agree with that, because it's a different sound. Yeah. It plays a different role in the music. I also want to ask you about your, this is just getting technical, about your bow and your bow grip when you're playing arco.
Yeah. Oh, it's I'm very free about that. I lost all my pride because of that. I forget all my pride, and I just do what's working for me at the moment, even if maybe my teachers would say it's not good. But let me see if I have a bow somewhere. Okay, basically, yeah, it's the classical one. So basically, I'm very often up on the stick. It's just a matter of equilibrium, like we all feel. So you accept to sacrifice a little bit of bow length and of bow weight as well, because the more you're on the frog, the more weight you have, but you have more mobility as well, and especially for the vertical stuff, when you're jumping all around, it's easier. And otherwise, I love to experiment with stuff and do what other people think is not good, and do good things with it. I mean, try it. So I love, that kind of hybrid position where you have the pinky behind the frog here, and it's kind of a hybrid French and German, and it's actually really useful. Or having the the ring finger behind the stick, complementing the thumb, allows you to rest the thumb and to be able to play and to have some kind of equilibrium and balancing of the thumb. And yeah, there are a lot of things that are cool as well. Playing PIDs with the middle one here. I really honestly, and of course playing German with the French and French with German, and honestly, I mean, I went to Conservatoire, so I learned how to do it the proper way, and I know that I'm not a classical musician, so I allow myself to do that. And of course, when I'm teaching, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, okay, because the right way to do it is not this, but if you want to experiment, I think that's the best way to find your own ideas. And so, yeah, I really love to experiment with the arco, and but I of course recommend to learn the proper way first.
So you just hold it in a way that achieves the sound that you want to get.
I mean, I have a default French position that is a little bit up on the frog. This is my default go-to position that's working well for me and the music and the way I want to phrase. But depending if I'm playing a lot of vertical percussive stuff, or some more very long or very if I need to have some tremolo on the bow length, I could go more on the frog, but having that pinky behind the frog so that I have some lateral power as well. It's really about the music. It's really about what music I'm playing, and it's why it's linked to improvisation, because the music idea is forming itself on the go, and then the position of the right hand will change as well depending on that. And there is something as well about the left hand it's working the same. It's because the more you focus your mind on the phrasing of the notes, the more you'll give some importance to the left hand, and then you're not thinking about the right hand, and you're changing the way your left hand is moving on the net. Is it more sliding? Is it playing more in position or on one string with shifts? The way the kind of a mental focus you put on one thing or the other is really influencing a lot the technical approach to it. Are you more sliding and then you're not using some geometrical shapes, or are you really traveling within some kind of path with fingerings and everything? It's all that is meant is about improvisation. When you're playing written music, it's an awesome exercise as well and challenge. But when you're playing written music, you have to optimize everything. You want to optimize your movement and change position and not change position, and use that kind of fingering and that kind of string and that kind of string skip. Whereas when you're improvising, you're more trying to let doors open but stay within the direction. So the technique adapts itself.
Yes, yeah. That's great. I love what you're like, those live videos and demonstrations you've done, that I know you do it all the time, playing bass and piano or keyboard at the same time. And I think that's really important. Kind of like you were saying, like bass players, it's a good idea to try and do other things, because if you're only always ever hearing just a few notes of a chord for your whole life, rather than the whole chord or other possibilities, really opens up your ears. So did you just start doing that for practice, or how did that start happening?
It's I needed it because so the thing is, 12 years ago I started with the kalimbas on the bass, and kalimbas have a pentatonic or diatonic tuning, so you have a limited amount of notes. So it was all about arranging to get the bass play the notes I didn't have in the kalimba, so that I had the relationship to have certain chords working. But at some point, I was always changing instruments and changing tunings, and at some point I said to myself, okay, I always played the piano at Conservatoire because it was a secondary instrument, but never took it really seriously. I mean, I did it and for arranging, but never. And at one point I said to myself, okay, I'm going to set up a chromatic kalimba, and okay, so I did. And then I said, okay, I have absolutely not enough skills with that. So I said, all right, I will work on the piano thing. And this has been a few years now that I'm really working on piano, on voicings, and it's really a good investment I did on myself to force myself to do it every day for a good years now, because it's really, I'm not even talking about playing at the same time, but just opening my ears to, okay, I heard all that. I knew I could do it with the bass, but the extent at which the extent of the possibilities are, of course, on the bass you're playing like, I mean, I'm talking about myself, but you're playing with 10% of the harmony. And even if you're playing the notes themselves that are cool, the range in which they are played in relationship to what should be under it, or I mean, the range of the notes and the voicing, so is changing everything. So being able to, of course, learn jazz piano, or I mean, piano in general is of course great. And it's I mean, you probably play piano as well. It can be if you didn't do it a lot, because I did. Some people start by playing piano and then pick up another instrument, and that's an awesome advantage. That's really great. But when you didn't, you don't realize that, oh, this is really, everything is not coming from there, but everything can be explained from there. So yeah, and what I wanted to say is that it can be intimidating to start out with that, because I mean, but it can go very fast as well, the progress. So yeah, and then eventually I played at the same time, of course, bass and piano, but I'm not the same. Some other people are doing that, and yeah, it's working great. Being it with keyboards and with synth, or just with piano, or with, of course, chromatic kalimba, which was the main goal of that. But yeah, studying piano and all of course, the jazz, the real book, and the jazz piano Mark Levin book, and yeah, it's awesome. And then it changes, of course, your bass playing, because you realize that something is, oh, I was just playing only one side of that voicing from there, but you can have it there. And yeah, piano is a great tool, of course.
Yeah, I love it. I just absolutely love what you're doing, and I love just I was watching a video the other day of you. I think you titled it "Don't Try This at Home," where you're playing a groove and it's very percussive with the bow.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's. Oh, thanks. Yeah,
I'm not gonna try it at home. Don't worry.
Is it one where I'm playing German bow with a French grip?
That's why I asked you about your grip.
And that may be as well the reason of the title, or something like this. Maybe this was the reason of the title. But yeah, this is part of I will actually put a little songbook of all those, eventually out of all those riffs and mini composition I did during the pandemic.
Oh, cool.
Eventually it will be out somewhere, sometime.
Oh, that's awesome. I won't take up too much more of your time, but yeah, you have a really amazing YouTube channel. I like the Bass and Creativity series you have, and you do a lot of live sessions. Other than you just mentioned that you're going to be releasing a book of those compositions, is there anything else coming up for you?
I don't know when is the next Jazz and Bow workshop, but I always have those workshops and live stuff. I have probably an album in the works that's probably coming in a few months. I'm not sure about when, but so some music is coming out, and yeah, I have this compilation of partitions, book of music that will probably in a few months come out.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much about it, about the touring and all that.
Yeah.
It's like everybody, we'll
Mhm.
see how it goes.
Yeah, we're waiting. And you have 2 courses on Discover Double Bass, right?
Yeah, so there's the jazz bowing one where we added almost 1 hour of bonus last year. And there's the improviser, creative improviser one coming, which is more about actually what we talked about a lot is approach to improvisation in a less jazz way and more, how to say that, real-time composition approach to improvisation and to interactivity. So featuring a great guitar player, Sam Dunn, and yeah, of course, it's always great to have some teaching material out on Discover Double Bass.
And that's coming. Is it out yet?
It's already out.
Okay,
Creative Improviser is already out. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, cool.
And yeah.
Oh, well, it was so great to talk with you and meet you. I'm sure we'll do this again. I hope to hear you live in person. This was a lot of fun. I just absolutely love what you're doing. It's so creative, and I can't wait to hear more from you, Olivier. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and interest, and keep on the great work you're doing with this podcast. It's really, I know it can be a lot of work to put together and to interview and I don't really know, but I can imagine what it is, and please keep on doing it. It's always because it's creating some real community feeling to the bass world, and as well the approach you have to it is very special. Those kind of interviews and the interest you have in others is really great. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I love doing it. And yeah, again, thank you so much. And we'll be in touch, Olivier. Take care.
Thanks, and I'll follow your music on Instagram, like always.
Likewise.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks, bye.